what's good YouTube? It's Adam from My Music More. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to go ahead and break down the Weeknd and Playboi Carti's track, Timeless. The sample for this one is 120 beats per minute, and the track is produced by Pharrell Williams, Ojivolta, Twisco, Mike Dean, BBYKOBE, and Blessed. For this one, we're going to go ahead and break down the track rather than remaking it from scratch. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of change-ups as the song progresses. So with that said, let's start with the intro. So that's the intro right there. Let's go ahead and start off with the bass. Except for the last pattern in the intro for the bass, it does switch up a little bit, and this note just stays on the B. For that sound, I'm using Logic's ES1 synthesizer, and I'm using the preset, the sub bass preset found under the synth bass category. It is manipulated a little bit. For the most part, these are the settings if you want to copy it. And I just added in some bit crusher to give it more of an analog vibe to it. Otherwise, it's a little bit drier. All right, layered with that, it is this sound right here, sort of like a shrill type of sound that I heard sitting on top of everything else. Now for that sound, I'm using Logic's sample Alchemy. The preset I'm using is the angelic guitar pad, and it's pretty much drenched in reverb. There's not a dry signal in there, just 100% wet to give it sort of that sort of spacey ambient type of sound. That only happens for the first 4 bars of the intro, and it comes back near the end. And then we got some synth keys or synths, layered synths, just to fill out this section. This is really what gives it that thickness to the intro. So we have this sound. We have this sound, all playing the same notes. And we have this pad right here. All giving different sort of tones to the final product. So for the first sound right here, we are using Logic's Alchemy, and the preset is called After the Rain on the Shine Performance. For the second sound, we're just using a super saw preset in Logic's Alchemy under the Thick Performance. And for the last sound, this is what gives us that sort of analog Mike Dean sound. We're using Logic's Retro Synth. Anytime you're looking for that analog flavor, reach for Logic's Retro Synth. We're using the dynamic soft pad preset under synth pads, and just a little bit of EQ to take out some of the lows. And all together, the pads sound like this. And then as we carry on into the intro, we get sort of this brassy ARP sound. Now for that sound, once again, we are using Logic's Alchemy, and the preset is called the Brassy Pad Swell. And I placed in Logic's ARP on it just to give it that arpeggiated pattern, and the rate is at 1/8, just building up off of the chords. Once again, the same chord progression as the other pads. And I have some volume automation on it just to kind of build it into the sequence like we hear in the original track. So all together, it sounds like this. It's kind of in the background. At the end of the intro, we get this sort of distorted, grainy type of sound to bring us into the actual track. So this is the sound I'm talking about right here. Now for that sound, I'm using Logic's Alchemy, and the preset is called Wall of Distortion. And that is the last sound from the intro, so let's carry on. All right, so starting off with the main bass melody, this is what it sounds like. It's this pattern right here. For that, I'm using Logic's Retro Synth. Once again, I want that analog flavor, so I'm reaching for Retro Synth. I'm using the classic analog bass preset. I adjusted the amp envelope right here to make it a little bit more plucky. I added in some echo as I heard in the original track. This is the settings right over here. And I added in some reverb to put it into a space using Logic's Chromaverb. There is a counter melody in here at the top of this pattern here. It's this right here. It's like this high string sound. For that, once again, I'm using Logic's Retro Synth, and the preset for that one is the Bright Strings preset with a little bit of EQ and reverb. We also got this pad right here. Just a nice, lush, full sounding pad. For that, I'm using Logic's Retro Synth. The preset is called Lush Pad. Once again, EQ and reverb is pretty much across the board on all these sounds here. And this is the progression for this. Let's bring in the counter melody and the bass. And then the last synth part here for this part is this build-up sound right here. So for that sound, what I did, I took the main chord in the track, this one right here. So the G major 7, and I'm using a sound in Logic's Alchemy, the alpha pad on the warm performance. I bounced that in place and then reversed it to get that build up sound that we need for this part. I also put in some automation, but starts a little bit in the center, goes over to the left, and gets pulled over to the right. And then, last but not least, we have the drums. So we have the hats, the snare, and the 808. And those drums just repeat for the entire track. All right, so moving on in the track, we get this new counter melody happening over here. For that sound, I'm using Logic's Retro Synth. We're using the classic analog bass preset, similar to the same as the one that we're using for the actual main melody. Once again, some space, some EQ, and some echo or delay on it. We have the same lush pad, but we get the sparkly pad coming into place. Kind of adds a little bit of glitter on top. And for that, we're using Logic's Retro Synth, the Lush Pad preset once again. And we're using Logic's Arpeggiator on the 132 rate to give it that fast sort of stutter arp sound. So as the track grows, more and more sounds come into play. Starting off with this synth pluck sound that we just talked about, the pattern does switch up to this pattern, and then that pretty much loops itself for the rest of the track. And then we get a couple more pads in here. For this sound, I'm using Logic's Retro Synth, the classic sawtooth pad over here. To get that pumping effect that I heard in the original track, I use Logic's Beat Breaker over here, and we're just using the sidechain preset under basic sidechain to give it that pumping effect. It's just about a 40% mix. It's not fully there, but it's there just to give it some movement. And I heard like a higher tone pad in there as well, so we put in this sound right here. For that, we're using Logic's Alchemy, and the preset is called Out of Touch on the Bright Performance. A lot of EQ on the sound to make it a little bit more mid-rangey sounding. And we get in this sound right here, sort of like a dark sounding choir. And for that, we're using Logic's Alchemy. The preset is called Dark Synth Choir on the Brighter Performance. And then on the following 4 bars, we get this one bell hit. It's just like this random bell hit that only happens in this part of the track. All right, and then our choirs start to come in. So for this choir, I'm using Logic's Alchemy, the Angelic Ghost preset. And for the secondary choir, more of a natural sounding choir, we're using Logic's Chamber Ensemble Swells preset. You can find that under Legacy, Logic Orchestral Choir, Chamber Ensemble Swells, just to give it more of that sort of natural sounding choir that I heard in the original track. And that carries on into the next part of the track. It kind of breaks down right over here. Let's take a listen. The bass comes back into play. And then we get this random electric keys chord as well right over here. And for that sound, I'm using Logic's Alchemy. It's just a keyboard sound, an 80s pop electric piano. Once again, reverb EQ. Then we have a little bit of a breakdown. So same chords from the intro, very similar sounds to the intro as well. We're using all the same sounds up here, except for these 2 sounds right over here. So we get a new set of strings. For that bright string sound, we're using Logic's Retro Synth, the retro strings with EQ really taking out a lot of the low end. And then we get this piano here as well. And we're just using Logic's Piano Studio Grand preset. And then we're moving on into sort of the latter half of the track. And it pretty much repeats itself for a lengthy amount of time. Over here, it's a little bit truncated. So for the new sounds that we add in this section right over here is this sound here. It's just a pad in Alchemy called Vintage Warmer on the low performance. We get some strings. For this, we're using Logic's Cinema Strings preset, Orchestral Strings, Cinema Strings. This is what the pattern looks like. And we have this lead sound just sitting on top of everything. It's like this little whistle sound. And for that, we're using Logic's Retro Synth, once again, the Retro Strings preset. All right, and then we'll just skip forward all the way to the end and to get that outro synth. Now for that sound, I am using Logic's Alchemy, the Leads United preset on the Lead 2 category. Performance. We have some chorus in there and some reverb, lots of reverb to put it into a space, an 8-second long reverb. And then of course for this gliding sound at the beginning. And then for that gliding edit at the end. To do that, it's very simple. All you gotta do is open up Logic's Alchemy, and in the advanced tab, you have the voices section over here. Just switch your mode over to legato, the priority to newest. And I selected it on time and pulled the glide all the way up to get that long gliding time so that it's not so quick. That's pretty much everything right there. So now let's go ahead and take a listen to everything from the top, the Weeknd and Playboi Carti's Timeless. Is the Weeknd and Playboi Carti's Timeless remade in Logic Pro. For the Logic Pro users out there, I'm going to go ahead and save this entire session for you. Place it as a downloadable link below this video. If you don't use Logic, I got your back as well. I'm going to export all the MIDI stems, audio stems, and of course include the drum kit that you heard in this remake. You can find that entire playback down below the like button as well. If you have a question on this or just want to chat or have any suggestions for future videos, let's go and chat down below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one later. Peace.